Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining today's webinar titled Exclusive Breastfeeding May Be Protective Against Type 1 Diabetes. My name is Haneen Abu Layla and I am the country coordinator for the Jordan Nutrition Innovation Lab. As more attendees are joining, I will begin by going over some of the logistical items for our webinar. Next, please. I would like to direct all attendees to a few functions on this Zoom call. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a chat icon and a Q&A icon. Please use the chat feature to engage in relevant conversations with the other attendees. Next, please. If you have a question for our speaker, please use the Q&A feature. We have allocated the final 15 minutes of this webinar for Q&A, at which point our speaker will respond to any questions from the audience. The webinar is being recorded and will be made available on our website following the event. We will repeat these technical housekeeping items in the chat box throughout the webinar as people may be joining in later times. Next, please. All right, in the beginning, I will start with introducing our project, the Jordan Nutrition Innovation Lab. The Jordan Nutrition Innovation Lab is a research and capacity building program that is funded by USAID Jordan under Feed the Future initiative. We pursue research and capacity building activities to support the health and nutrition of women of reproductive age, pregnant lactating women, and infant and young children in Jordan. Some of our key objectives are implementing rigorous maternal and child nutrition research agenda, including conducting analyses of existing nationally representative datasets and conducting comprehensive evaluations of programs such as USAID's Community Health and Nutrition Program. Moreover, we build individual and institutional capacity through the award of fellowships, scientific symposia, workshops, and webinars. We conduct these webinars on a regular basis as a means to conduct outreach to a wider stakeholder group in and outside Jordan. The webinar is moderated by Dr. Shibani Gwash. Now, let me introduce Dr. Shibani. Dr. Shibani is a research associate professor at the Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy. She is the director of the Feed the Future Food Systems for Nutrition Innovation Lab and also the principal investigator for the Jordan Nutrition Innovation Lab. She has experience working in Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, and South Africa, and her research interests are in understanding the role of agriculture in improving nutrition while ensuring health, assessing the diet and non-diet determinants of nutritional status of infants and young children, and also testing interventions aimed to improving maternal and infant nutrition and growth. Dr. Shibani, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Haneen, and welcome everybody, morning, afternoon, and evening from wherever you are joining us. As Haneen has introduced, this is an exciting webinar series that we conduct for the Jordan Nutrition Innovation Lab. And the topics that we highlight really focus on issues related to maternal, infant, and young child nutrition, particularly around infant and young child feeding. Today's webinar is really focused on trying to understand some research that has been conducted in the region around exclusive breastfeeding and its potentially protective effects against non-communicable diseases such as type 1 diabetes. As we're all aware, we are undergoing across the globe rapid globalization, and there's a nutrition transition that is increasing the burden of non-communicable diseases across the globe. In fact, the IDF Diabetes Atlas in 2021 estimated there are about 18,000 new cases of just type 1 diabetes, with a total of 109 cases among children aged 0 to 14 years. And this is particularly in the MENA region. So this is a critical issue. And there have been sort of studies that have indicated that dietary and environmental factors could either increase or decrease the risk of type 1 diabetes. Today's webinar is focusing on one such really critical intervention, which is to support exclusive breastfeeding in women. And the presentation that is being made today and the research that was done was led by Dr. Ipek Çikekli Takar and Dr. Raika Durosoy from the Acıbadem University in Istanbul. We're really privileged to have both Dr. Ipek and Dr. Raika here. Let me just introduce them briefly. Dr. Ipek is a researcher and lecturer in nutrition and dietetics, and she's currently working on her PhD with a focus on human milk oligosaccharides, where she's exploring the unique components of human milk and their impact on both child and adult health. And for this work, she is collaborating with the Technical University of Denmark, where they explore innovative approaches in human milk biotechnology. With her team, Dr. Ipek is conducting an intervention study on human milk oligosaccharides and their potential effects on type 1 diabetes. And the work that they have been doing so far has really contributed new insights into the relationships between nutrition in early life and child health, particularly regarding the role of exclusive breastfeeding in reducing the risk of type 1 diabetes. Dr. Ipek is passionate about bridging research to practice and is committed to advancing scientific knowledge in the community health nutrition field. In addition, Dr. Ipek will be presenting, and she will be accompanied in the Q&A with Dr. Raika Durosoy, who is a physician who graduated from the Ege University Medical School, and she also has a background in public health, as well as cancer epidemiology. She's a specialist of public health and works in the same department as Dr. Ipek, and was an associate professor and now is a professor. She works around tobacco control, communicable diseases, and environmental health. I'd like to welcome both Dr. Ipek and Dr. Raika and hand over to Dr. Ipek to start her presentation. Over to you, Dr. Ipek. We're excited to hear your presentation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm excited to share my research on a critical topic, the relationship between exclusive breastfeeding and the risk of type 1 diabetes mellitus, particularly in the context of Middle East and North African region. Type 1 diabetes is a growing health concern worldwide, and understanding its risk factors is crucial for prevention strategies. So today, I will explore the epidemiology of type 1 diabetes and discuss breastfeeding as a potential protective factor and examine other dietary factors. We will start with outline. I will talk about introduction to type 1 diabetes in the epidemiology, statistics, and burden of the disease. After that, breastfeeding suggested as a protective factor with suggested researchers and other dietary risk factors related with type 1 diabetes, the impact of secondhand smoking on type 1 diabetes, which is relating a hidden risk for type 1 diabetes. And we will review the relevant research studies and breastfeeding practice in the Middle East, North African region. After that, determinants of the breastfeeding practice, the case of the Jordan we will talk about, and we will close with call to action. Type 1 diabetes mellitus, we all know that an autoimmune disease where the immune system mistakenly attacks the insulin-producing beta cells in the pancreas. As you can see in the diagram, in a healthy body, insulin helps glucose enter cells to be used for energy. However, in the type 1 diabetes, the pancreas is no longer be able to produce insulin, as shown on the right side of the image. Without insulin, glucose cannot enter the cells and stays in the bloodstream, leading to high blood sugar levels. Because of this destruction of the beta cells, people with type 1 diabetes mellitus dependent on the external or exogenous insulin to regulate their blood glucose levels. Globally, the incidence of the type 1 diabetes has been rising, especially among children. Type 1 diabetes often occurs on childhood, but although it can occur at any age, the destruction of insulin-producing cells usually begins early in life, and genetic factors are important in the development of type 1 diabetes, especially genes, human leukocyte antigen. But however, the genetic predisposition doesn't alone explain the rising incidence. Environmental factors may act as a trigger or promoters of the autoimmune response. We said globally incidence of the diabetes has been increasing, and projections also show that this trend will continue. As you can see, the top section, the global incidence of new cases among children, 77.8 per 1,000 children in 2011, rising to 107.3 per 1,000 children in 2021. Especially 60.7% come from in the Middle East, North African region. We can say almost 1 in 6 new cases of type 1 diabetes cases come from MENA region. This growing healthcare burden is particularly concerning given the lifelong nature of the disease and its management. The cost of managing type 1 diabetes is significantly higher than the average healthcare cost, and at least 3.2 times greater than the per capita healthcare expenditure. If presence of the complication, this healthcare expenditure rising to 9.4 times higher. And many low and middle income countries, including those MENA region, lack comprehensive data regarding the prevalence and management of type 1 diabetes in the adolescent. Given the significant financial and healthcare burden of managing this disease, it's crucial to explore preventive strategies. Such proven strategy is breastfeeding, especially exclusive breastfeeding, shown offer protective benefits against type 1 diabetes. The component of the human milk, especially in colostrum, play a critical role in protecting against type 1 diabetes. Both colostrum and mature milk provide sufficient energy to support infant growth and development. Colostrum is especially rich in immunoglobulins, which play a major role in protecting infants. Also, the protein balance in colostrum with 80% whey and 20% casein supporting easy digestion, and also rich in omega-3 fatty acids that are important for the brain and eye development, and also the other composition of the oligosaccharides, especially this is really important for the research studies we will talk about later, in colostrum, which act as a probiotics to support good health and immune system development to help prevent autoimmune conditions. When we take a closer look at some of bioactive substances found in human milk that contribute its protective effects, as mentioned earlier, HMOs, human milk oligosaccharides, act as a probiotic, shaping infant gut microbiota by supporting growth of beneficial bacteria. We will also talk about secretory immunoglobulin A provides critical immunologic protection for autoimmune disease, and proteins in breast milk such as lactoferrin play important role in cell growth and iron absorption. Also, commensal bacteria, the support of the healthy digestive system, strengthen the immune system. Now that we will explore the broader category of bioactive in human milk, we will take a closer look at the specific group that plays crucial role in preventing type 1 diabetes, human milk oligosaccharides. HMOs provide a wide window of opportunity for preventing of this disease. These oligosaccharides are known for their ability to support infant immune system and good health, and also the diagram you can see the right in the right shows some of diverse structures of HMOs which vary based on their numbers and linkage of monosaccharides, and they offer wide range of benefits for developing immunity in neonate. They are not metabolized, and they are unique for this ability, and instead they act energy source for beneficial good bacteria, promoting a healthy microbiome, and they help to improve commensal good bacteria such as bifidobacterium, and can help to improve number of short chain fatty acids. Also play critical role with improving barrier function and anti-inflammatory properties. Also, short chain fatty acids produced by HMOs fermentation modulate the immune system and prevent like autoimmune disease, including type 1 diabetes. We know, we've seen how HMOs in breast milk contribute to immune protection. It's also important to recognize that as infants grow, their nutritional needs change. This brings us the crucial role of complementary feeding. After we can see breast milk provides all the energy to up to 6 months, and after 6 months, the energy gap becomes larger, and complementary foods are necessary to meet infants' increasing nutritional needs. But the introduction of complementary foods should be timely and appropriate. Other dietary factors that may influence the development of type 1 diabetes, starting with the cow's milk. Cow's milk identified, especially cow's milk proteins, identified as a potential trigger for autoimmune responses, and introducing cow's milk early can cause mucosal inflammation and increase gut permeability, and this increased gut permeability allows the food antigens to pass through the intestinal barrier, triggering an immune response, and that may lead to the development of autoimmune disease. Delaying the introduction of cow's milk inversely associated with risk of type 1 diabetes, and this means that later introduction may reduce the risk of triggering autoimmune disease. After discussing the potential risks associated with the early introduction of cow's milk, we can see now fruits and vegetables play either promoting or preventing type 1 diabetes. We all know fruits and berries, vegetables are excellent source of vitamin C, which is essential for supporting the immune system. Studies show inverse association with type 1 diabetes observed based on age at which fruits are introducing into diet. So fruits and vegetables are important for overall health, but timing is crucial. Another important dietary factor that can influence type 1 diabetes risk the introduction of cereals, particularly gluten. Research suggests that the timing of gluten introduction is critical when it comes to risk of developing type 1 diabetes, and later introduction to gluten was associated with reduced type 1 diabetes. Especially introduction of gluten before the 4 months increased the risk of the disease. The issue with early introduction is that gliadin peptides found in gluten may increase the intestinal permeability, and increase this gut permeability also stimulate the inflammation, contribute to development of pancreatic autoimmunity. Like cow's milk, the timing of gluten introduction play a critical role in modulating risk of type 1 diabetes. We all know vitamin D for its most well-known function, which is bone metabolism and calcium homeostasis. However, research shows that vitamin D has many more functions beyond the skeletal head, and during infancy, vitamin D supplementation inversely related with type 1 diabetes. Also, with vitamin D has shown the influence the T-cell response in the immune system. This means that vitamin D can help prevent autoimmune reactions that lead to destruction of beta cells in the pancreas. Beyond the nutrition and vitamin D supplementation, environmental factors like passive smoking also pose a hidden risk in the development of chronic disease, including type 1 diabetes. Smoking is considered a significant public health issue around the world, and its relationship with various diseases, including diabetes, has been subject of the most research, but we often in the research focus on the direct impact of smoking on the health. But it's important to recognize that secondhand smoke exposure can also pose serious risk. Secondhand smoke exposure, also known as passive smoking, includes contact with side stream smoke, and though that's not widely discussed, there is emerging evidence that secondhand smoke exposure play a role in development of type 1 diabetes. Also, particularly we talk about side stream smoke because our side stream smoke is unfiltered, and it is 4 times more toxic than the smoke directly inhaled by the smoker, and it can what makes the side stream smoke even more harmful is that it can remain in the air for the minutes or even hours, depending on the environmental and indoor space like homes and workplace. These toxic chemicals build up over time. So it's important to recognize that even if the one doesn't smoke, a living environment with smokers can still pose a significant health risk. Exposure to secondhand smoke at home has been identified a risk factor for poor glycemic control and linked with hemoglobin A1C levels. And one of the most concerning findings is maternal smoking during pregnancy. Also, maternal smoking during pregnancy associated with childhood developing onset type 1 diabetes. Secondhand smoke can increase the activity of the sympathetic nervous system, increase the level of the circulating catecholamine, and this results can change in the insulin release. Now that we've explored the various factors that influence the risk of type 1 diabetes, it's time to dive into research studies with Finnish birth cohort study. The study revealed the highest concentration of HMOs found in colostrum and gradually decreased after childbirth. Also, there are 2 genes, fucosytransferase 2 and fucosytransferase 3, the secretory status of and Lewis genotypes of mothers can define. And we can say that these genes play a significant role of variation of HMO composition. And also parity, the number of pregnancy, presence of the gestational diabetes also has effect on HMO composition. The research study 2 is another case study, looks at how HMOs can protect against autoimmune diabetes, specifically in the experimental model like mice. This study investigated protective role of human milk oligosaccharides against the development of autoimmune diabetes in non-obese diabetic mice. When I first came across this study, I was really excited, and it has actually become one of the key points of our project we are currently conducting. We are studying on longer-term HMO supplementation in children with type 1 diabetes, and we started this project with Dr. Raika about 3 years ago, and will soon complete and publish our results. Now, if we return to this study, in this experiment, 4-week-old female non-obese diabetic mice were fed a diet containing HMOs for a period 6 weeks, and study showed that early dietary supplementation with this HMOs significantly delayed the onset and reduced the incidence of the type 1 diabetes. You can see the D-section histologic images. Pancreas in the HMO-fed mice showed significantly less inflammation and with favor sign of incidence score. This incidence score is a hallmark of autoimmune diabetes, where the immune cells attack the insulin-producing beta cells. Also, the HMOs in the study showed that specifically increased its short-chain fatty acids in gut and improving the benefit bacteria in the gut. In gut. HMOs also had the balancing the cytokine profile and lower levels of pro-inflammatory cytokines, like interleukin 17, and higher level of regulatory cytokines. So we can say that HMO may contribute to prevention of type 1 diabetes by promoting healthier gut microbiome and supporting immune regulation during early life. A large-scale human study that focused on the impact of the breastfeeding on the risk of type 1 diabetes. This study published in Scandinavian in Diabetes Care, this Scandinavian birth cohorts to examine the relationship infant feeding practice, the risk of type 1 diabetes. The study found that children who never breastfed had doubled risk of developing type 1 diabetes, and the length of breastfeeding didn't significantly affect the risk of those who were never breastfed. But it's important to note that the difference in terminology used in study, the breastfeeding terminology in the study, this refers to infants receiving breastfeeding along with water-based drinks and with vitamin supplements. And World Health Organization is defined the exclusive breastfeeding term. The infant receives only breast milk without any additional food or drink, not even water. One possible explanation is that in the founding of these results is colostrum provide a protective effect, because colostrum is the first form of the milk produced after birth, and research showed that a clear difference between the colostrum fed children and not colostrum fed children with good microbiota between children who develop autoimmunity and do not develop. So this study underlines the importance of initiating breastfeeding, even if the duration is shorter, to potentially reduce the risk of type 1 diabetes. So this is the research study for a meta-analysis. On the right, we have forest plots showing the different studies and their findings. The pooled odds ratio highlighted at the bottom indicates a significant protective effect of breastfeeding for at least 2 weeks and in reducing the risk of type 1 diabetes. And exclusive breastfeeding could reduce the risk of type 1 diabetes. The studies showed that by 15%. However, it's important to account for potential confounders in this data, like maternal age, birth weight, and maternal diabetes. Now, I would like to present our study that I had privilege to conduct with Dr. Raika, which is the growing body of evidence on the relationship between breastfeeding and type 1 diabetes. We aim to investigate the nutritional risk factors, especially breastfeeding early in life. We include 120 children in cases with type 1 diabetes and 126 children in controls as healthy children. As highlighted, almost half of the cases were either never exclusive breastfed or were breastfed for less than 1 month. We observed that less than a quarter of the control group exclusive breastfed for 6 months. And when we look at the total breastfeeding duration, the numbers are quite similar. However, it's noteworthy that more than half of the cases were breastfed for 24 months compared to control. We found that children with a birth interval more than 6 years had a higher risk of developing type 1 diabetes in sex and age-adjusted analysis, but not in multivariable analysis. One of the most striking findings was that longer duration of exclusive breastfeeding were associated with reduced risk of type 1 diabetes. And each additional month of exclusive breastfeeding is decreased by risk 70%. So this finding emphasizes that protective role of exclusive breastfeeding, and also the early introduction of cereals, particularly before the 6th month, was found to significant increase the risk of type 1 diabetes by 2.5 times higher. Also, not consuming infant formula was associated with lower risk of developing type 1 diabetes. And these findings suggest that it's not just over length of breastfeeding, but rather the exclusive in the early months that may have stronger protective effect. Moving forward, we also explored the other environmental factors that could influence the development of type 1 diabetes. Our analysis didn't show any significant differences in smoking during pregnancy and lactation period. However, we found that parents in the case group smoked significantly more cigarettes per day at home compared to control group, and specifically for every additional cigarette smoked at home, the risk of type 1 diabetes in children increased. The risk increased 1.08 times higher. So this reinforces the importance of reducing smoking exposure in the home to protect against the risk of type 1 diabetes. As with many studies, there are limitations in our research that will be taken into account when interpreting the results, particularly regarding how passive smoking exposure was assessed. One key limitation that passive smoking based on self-report, and we didn't directly assess the paternal smoking during pregnancy or lactation, and we didn't assess the cord blood creatinine level, which is the gold standard of the calculation of the passive smoking exposure. So future studies should aim to include both paternal and maternal smoking data, as well as gather more detailed information on where and when smoking occurs in the household environment. After reviewing the global context, it's important to note that it is important to focus on the breastfeeding practice in the Middle East and North Africa region. Understanding these trends can provide insight into challenges and opportunities for promoting breastfeeding in this area. The regional average for exclusive breastfeeding was estimated 3.9%, and as infants grow, the rate of exclusive breastfeeding decreased. For example, in Saudi Arabia, you can see the blue one, the rate drops from around 90% at birth and below 10% by 6 months. On the right, we can see the continued breastfeeding rate for children up to 2 years, and estimated regional average for continued breastfeeding was reported 41.5%, and the highest rate are seen in Iran and Pakistan, where the continued breastfeeding rate remains above 50%. On the left side, over time, some countries, region have seen a decline on the prevalence of the exclusive breastfeeding. For example, Iran and Libya experienced significant declines. And the right side, an increasing trend was also observed in some countries, Palestine, Iraq, Palestine, Iraq. On the right side, however, we can see the Lebanon and Pakistan increase the breastfeeding trends. So this demonstrates that regional efforts must be tailored to each country's specific needs and challenges. In the MENA region, 22.1% of infants are reported to consume infant formula, and the highest rate of the Saudi Arabia and the lowest rate with Kuwait. There's lack of comprehensive data on the region of formula feeding. Moreover, bottle feeding immediately after birth has been associated with early introduction of solid foods at around 4 months of age, which contradicts World Health Organization recommendation for exclusive breastfeeding until 6 months. This map highlights the exclusive breastfeeding rates for infants under 6 months across the different Middle Eastern countries. Globally, rates of exclusive breastfeeding in the first 6 months of life have increased 10% point from past decade. And World Health Assembly for exclusive breastfeeding rates is targeted by the 50% in 2025. WHO recommendation and exclusive breastfeeding, we state 50%, but Jordan has one of the lowest rates in the region with only 70.8% of infants exclusively breastfed. And Syria and Iraq are doing moderately better than the Jordan, but most Middle Eastern countries are falling short of the World Health Organization recommendation, signaling a need for the improved breastfeeding support and education. Jordan, in particularly, has one of the lowest rate in highlighting an area for targeted intervention. This is the UNICEF data from 2007 to 2017, focusing on exclusive breastfeeding rates under the 6 months, and exclusive breastfeeding rates improved slightly from the 2012 and to 2017, with males having higher rates than females. Despite this slight improvement, we can see the gender variation, with males being more likely to be both exclusive breastfed and continued breastfed, which may indicate socio-cultural influence on breastfeeding practice in Jordan. When we look at the Jordan population and family health survey in 2023, only 23.8 infants in Jordan were breastfed within the first hour after birth, and only 23% of children under 6 months exclusive breastfed. And there are really insufficient dietary diversity, high consumption of sweet beverage, and additionally 56% of children are given sweet and beverages, indicating poor feeding practice. So after discussing Jordan population family health survey highlighting the key infants feeding practice, let's now shift our focus understanding what influences mothers' attitudes toward breastfeeding in Jordan. We can say mothers with a higher family income tend to have more positive attitude. Also, mothers willing to exclusive breastfeed had more positive attitude, and having a pregnancy or delivery complication have a more positive attitude for exclusive breastfeeding, and also having a preterm infant. But this is the really important data. The 60% of mothers do not receive any counseling or advice related to breastfeeding. This highlights the need for more comprehensive support and education for mothers right after childbirth. Additionally, the role of hospitals in promoting positive breastfeeding behavior is not effective as it could be. There is the room improvement in how hospitals support new mothers in establishing maintaining breastfeeding habits. While I was diving into my research, I came across something that really caught my attention. It's a headline from the Jordan Times. This isn't just a health concern, because the Jordan has some of the highest smoking rates in the world, but it's a major economic issue to also costing the economy. It made me think about how such habits could be influencing health outcomes across the country, especially in families with young children. While browsing the tobacco atlas, I found this concerning data on smoking in Jordan. It highlights that Jordan ranks 14 globally in terms of smoking prevalence, with 26% of the population age more than 15 years old. Is significantly higher than the global average, which stands at 23%. And other countries, high smoking rates with Nauru and Myanmar. So this is really a public health concern in Jordan. As you can see, 17% all that's attributable to tobacco use, smoking. Men in particularly have a staggering smoking prevalence with 53%, more than half of adults regularly using the tobacco products. And the youth smoking rates also alarming with nearly 20%. So in breastfeeding, we can say it acts as a natural child, promoting healthy immune and good development while reducing exposure to potential autoimmune triggers. The longer of the duration of exclusive breastfeeding, the stronger protective effects against type 1 diabetes. And we can say healthcare professionals at all levels must contribute by providing prenatal counseling and immediate postnatal support of the help mothers intake breastfeeding. So there is still so much we have yet not uncovered about the extraordinary nature of human milk. Could it be ultimate form of precision nutrition crafted perfectly by the mother to meet her infant's ever-changing needs? And by recognizing breastfeeding as more than just feeding, but as a critical public health intervention from governments to healthcare professionals can contribute making a difference. Whether the policy change, education, direct support to mothers, we all have a role creating a healthier future for children. And any increase will improve infant health, reduce the disease like type 1 diabetes, lower healthcare costs, and boost overall child health, also overall child development. Unfortunately, we have still a lot of questions, and we still do not know the answer of those questions. However, understanding these mechanisms provides opportunities for policymakers to vastly improve maternal child health. We must overcome the barriers in many MENA countries, cultural beliefs, social norms, and these play a major role in discouraging breastfeeding. Lack of education, inadequate support, workplace policies also important. And governments and healthcare providers can collaborate by establishing national breastfeeding programs, educating mothers about benefits of exclusive breastfeeding, and creating policies. Clinicians can provide better education on breastfeeding, encourage the skin contact, offer a consistent follow-up during the postpartum period. In conclusion, breastfeeding offers a natural, effective shield, we can say, against the type 1 diabetes. Promoting exclusive breastfeeding, this has a significant role protecting from the type 1 diabetes. So as we continue face rising type 1 diabetes rates, especially in regions in MENA, breastfeeding should be at the forefront of our public health strategies. And we all have a role play creating healthy future for our children. The solution is within our reach. It's time to recognize the importance of breastfeeding, not only nourishment, but disease prevention strategy. Are we ready to take part in this change? So the last one, closing remarks, I would like to conclude by highlighting a particularly interesting and relevant article. This study explored sustainable and cost-effective methods for producing diverse of human milk oligosaccharides using a plant closely tobacco plant. Perhaps HMOs could be produced in MENA region as well, utilizing a local plant species that shares similar characteristics with tobacco plants. I believe this topic will be a pivotal role in our future discussions as we explore its implication for public health. Thank you for your attention. I'm happy to take any questions or hear your thoughts on this important topic.
Thank you, Dr. Ipek. This is such a brilliant presentation. There's a lot of questions, a lot of interest from the attendees, and I am really, really excited to start this Q&A session. We've got about 15 minutes. I don't need to have closing remarks because I do feel like there are a lot of really great questions coming in. I think what I'd like to do is focus on some of the topic-specific questions, and then maybe we can go a little bit more into what are the policy implications, questions, and how one could address it. And yes, thank you, Dr. Raika, for joining us as well. So I think, Dr. Ipek, there's like a series of different questions here. And maybe I can start with the ones that are focused on sort of looking at the diet of the mother. One of the questions, there are 3 questions or 4 questions almost that have come in from Alexandra. And her question is, one, does the diet of the breastfeeding mother significantly affect the composition of HMOs? And then in addition, in your research, in your work, was there a difference in outcomes when you were comparing women who were exclusively breastfeeding who had a poor diet versus those who had a healthy diet, or varied healthy diets? And the last question she has is, were the outcomes positive in regards to preventing type 1 diabetes, regardless of the mother's diet, as long as the child was exclusively breastfed? So in essence, I think the last 2 questions are, does the diet of, the whole thing is about the diet relative to the composition of human milk, oligosaccharides, and breast milk, and then is there a difference in outcomes when you're looking at women who are breastfeeding but who have a poor diet versus a healthy diet? Over to you, Dr. Ipek.
We didn't look the maternal diet on our as a case control study. Unfortunately, this is a limitation for our study maternal diet. We didn't explore and the case control studies has many limitations. As I recall, BIOS also in this case control study just look at in the starting with our research, but not in the during pregnancy or lactation.
Great. In terms of so this is sort of a question to then follow up on whether you were able to look at infants who were being formula fed versus those who are breastfed, and is there any research, whether it's yours or other groups, that have looked at the risk of type 1 diabetes in either exclusively or predominantly breastfed or formula-fed infants? Is there any literature out there that from your group or that you're aware of?
I'm not sure to understand the question. Can you repeat
the
again?
comparison of risk of type 1 diabetes in children who are breastfed versus children who are formula fed, who received infant formula and were not breastfed.
Yes, this is the main outcome of our research. We found exclusive breastfeeding increasing by 1 month. We found reducing risk of type 1 diabetes by 17%. But we know that when you introduce the formula for your baby, you are not breastfeeding exclusively. So this is really important, cutting the period of the exclusive breastfeeding and doing it shorter period of exclusively breastfeeding. So we can say that there are really difference between exclusively breastfeeding, total breastfeeding, and infant formula breastfeeding, predominant for breastfeeding. These all terminations are different from the exclusive breastfeeding. So we must solve the difference of these terms. Formula feeding is made shorter the duration of exclusively breastfeeding. So it's higher risk of type 1 diabetes for.
I think I really appreciated the point was the duration of the breastfeeding, because I think that is also very critical. It's not just that it's exclusive breastfeeding, but you have to have it, the longer the duration of exclusive breastfeeding, the more protective it is, as you're seeing in your research. So that's the critical point as well, to highlight. And it kind of brings a different angle to what you've just said, that this is not just about diet, but it's also about disease prevention, that there's a long-term perspective here that needs to be highlighted. That's really important. Now, there are a couple of questions that are linked to human milk oligosaccharides and the commercial market in infant formula. And I think maybe I can just encompass it and saying that one is there enough evidence to supplement infants who receive formula with human milk oligosaccharides? Is that something that is likely to be picked up by commercial companies? And would you recommend HMO supplements in human milk substitutes? It's a tough one. It's a tough one.
I would not recommend any formula and any breastfeeding substances for in order to breastfeeding. But I can say that I saw huge literature with HMO supplemented with infant formula is came with better outcomes for either good health and or immune system outcomes. So we do not recommend infant formula, never, but infant formula with supplemented HMOs have more better outcomes compared with just infant formula.
Yeah, so that there is some mimicking of the breast milk when you add HMOs. So there's something emerging around the importance of human milk oligosaccharides. And yeah, no, and absolutely, you can have the view that you would not recommend, irrespective of those better outcomes than just infant formula, that in fact exclusive breastfeeding and longer duration of breastfeeding is really supportive of reducing risk. And I also feel it's important to highlight that there are other benefits for the mother and for the child that also are ancillary to disease prevention that one should keep in mind. So there's a question actually which goes in the direction of genetic mutations. And so maybe I am not familiar with genetic mutations and composition of colostrum in breast milk. So let me read it out for you. And this is coming from Dr. Nahla Bayari, who is who's an associate professor in Jordan. So she says mutations in the FUT3 gene affects the composition of colostrum and consequently the level of human milk oligosaccharides. Now, given that these mutations are associated with increased risk of viral infections, is it plausible to hypothesize that these mutations could also contribute to a higher risk of type 1 diabetes? And in addition, viral infections are known to potentially trigger autoimmune response, including infections that might affect the pancreas, leading to pancreatic inflammation and increasing the risk of type 1 diabetes. So I think in essence, what Dr. Nahla is asking is, could it be the mutation? Could it be viral infections that could be the result of the pancreatic inflammation and type 1 diabetes? And did you consider that in your research? And would you agree with this comment?
I'm not able to answer this question. I'm sorry. I do not have enough information about genetic mutations, but you mentioned about fucosyltransferase 2 or this.
No, it's just about this particular gene, FUT3 gene, which I'm not familiar with either. But yeah, I think maybe Dr. Nahla is probably better equipped on this. But I'm guessing that you will find maybe if viral infections are, I think documenting viral infections would be the way that if they are likely to have inflammatory effects. But if the population doesn't have very high viral infection load, then it could be that, you know, and I think maybe that needs to be accounted for in the analysis. That's how I see it.
We can say just this secretarial status of mothers with phosphotransferase genes, with phosphotransferase 2 and FA2, 83, just a little percent of the whole mothers in the world. We can say almost 8 or 10%, maybe a little less of the mothers are non-secretary. So we can say most of the women are secretary to release this human milk oligosaccharides to various glycans or various monosaccharides, other 2-fucosyltransferase, 3-fucosyltransferase, or 3-sialyl lactose, 6-sialyl lactose. All of them are unique for health, for child health, and also for the supplementation or the prevention of the various disease.
Great. And I think maybe what I would do is I would suggest to Dr. Nahla that maybe you can connect with Dr. Nahla, Dr. Ipek, because there's a bigger, longer conversation that might be of interest for both of you. So thank you for taking that on. The next sort of question that is coming up is, are there recommendations you think you could make based on your work regarding, because you talked about gluten-containing foods and the introduction of cereals as well as cow's milk, but particularly this question is coming about gluten-containing foods for infants. And so the question is, are there recommendations based on your work that you would make on the timing of introducing gluten-containing foods for infants? And would these recommendations differ for exclusively breastfed or mixed formula-fed infants?
I can say the European Food and Safety authorized recommendation, gluten-containing foods shouldn't include to child diet before the 4 months in life, but it shouldn't be later for 8 months, later the 8 months. So optimally, maybe we should say 7 months or 6 to 8 months, we can include the child dieted in gluten-containing foods.
Great, thank you.
Optimally, we can say 7 months, yes.
7 months. And I think generally you will find that mostly first foods tend to be rice cereal based. And maybe that's an approach to use where you start something that is a cereal, but it's not a gluten-containing cereal. Maybe that
Yes.
could be to be on the safe side to start with that. And that seems to be general practice because it's lighter as well from a digestive perspective. Great. And I'm running out of time here, but there are questions still coming in. And I apologize for the last question that has come in because I do know that we have a wrap up. Maybe I will take a stab at this and say, okay, one of the questions that has come in is around colostrum. And the question is, has there been any comparison between infants who were initially fed colostrum and then switched to formula feeding versus those that are exclusively formula fed, supplement with HMOs? I think this is a great research question. And Haya is wondering if colostrum alone might be sufficient to provide some protection against autoimmune diseases later in life, given that many mothers may not be able to breastfeed for a number of reasons. Your thoughts, Dr. Ipek?
Colostrum is really rich in immunoglobulins, in immune components for the child. So colostrum should be given in the first hour after birth. I'm not sure colostrum is for. I'm not sure to understand if colostrum in order to formula fed or breastfeeding.
Yeah, basically, yeah, saying that if infants received colostrum and then they move to formula, as long as they received colostrum, can that be protective is the question.
I'm not sure. This can be a research question, maybe, but we can say exclusive breastfeeding is recommended, and formula feeding is not recommended by either World Health Organization, either other organizations. We can say just longer exclusive breastfeeding duration can protective for type 1 diabetes.
Great, thank you. And I realize we are officially out of time. And I know there was one more question about prevalence of infant formula feeding, and I apologize to the person who's asked the question, but I just want to take this opportunity to thank you, Dr. Ipek, Dr. Raika, for joining us and presenting a very fabulous, insightful webinar with lots of food for thought. And I can see new research questions that have emerged out of this conversation, as well as the audience Q&A. And I'm looking forward to hearing about your findings from your intervention work. I also want to thank the audience for staying with us and asking such critically important questions. So thank you, everybody. And we are a minute over, so we will let everybody go, and I will close this webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you.